Hi, this is Wale Oluwade. Today I'll be teaching on the subject, the value of education. I'll be examining the topic, what I've titled, the value of education. I'm sure you're thinking, I want to have a go at our decrepit and moribund education sector. Well, no, that's for another day. My objective here is to say in a few minutes why you, as an individual, have got to personally develop your mind. I am saying that after you've gotten a university degree, you've got to embark on a personal quest for knowledge in as many diverse and varied fields as practicably possible. Why is this necessary? I published an article on this subject 15 years ago titled The Dangers of Educated Illiterates. Many, especially in Africa, believe being educated is tantamount or equal to having or possessing paper qualification, which then gives you access to job opportunities and the proverbial better life. Well, truth is, education is way much more than that elementary and narrow understanding. What then is education? Education is a means of facilitating learning or the transfer of knowledge, skills, competence, values, beliefs, and habits. Now, what are educational methods? This includes storytelling, discussions, teaching, training, research, reading, observations, meditations, etc. Now, the current coronavirus pandemic, popularly called COVID-19, has brought home even more starkly the necessity of multidimensional and lifelong education. Why? The sheer depth, because the sheer depth of ignorance and illiteracy on basic social, political, economic, and governance issues that has been exhibited by individuals is simply mind numbing. Several silly conspiracy theories that I'll never bother to even give a second glance, but supposed educated people not only believed this, but became purveyors of them. And that is what has warranted this series. If you are not broadly enlightened, knowledgeable, and highly informed well beyond the narrow confines of your daily routines and professional training or academic attainment, you are going to be a thoroughly gullible person and perpetual victim in life. Ignorance, guess what? Ignorance is a deadly disease, perhaps far worse than any disease pandemic itself. Noam Chomsky, the great American public intellectual, said, education is a system of imposed ignorance. Martin Luther King, another great American, said, nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Finally, Bertrand Russell, a great American English philosopher, said, men are born ignorant, but not stupid. They are only made stupid by education. Now, that is more interesting. This man says men are born ignorant. All of us were born ignorant. We were born, our minds were blank. But then we began to learn. So learning is a way to lifelong, education. But once you go to study and you become an engineer or a medical doctor or a pharmacist or a fashion designer, and you think that is all you need to know, then this man is saying you are stupid. Because there is so much more to what you know in your narrow field of education. If your knowledge base is not broad based and multidimensional, you are limited in your use to society. And I see this daily in Africa and most other developing nations, where religious charlatans have lorded it over the mass of their people to their ruin and damnation. Now, I devoted 6 teachings to developing a strong spirit man. But guess what? Without a sound mind, working together with your strongly built spirit man, you are limited in use. A man with a strong spirit, who is limited educationally, will be limited in efficacy, impact, and scope of influence. And again, by education, I'm not referring to academic qualifications. Yet, while this is necessary, it is only but a foundation. It is what you do deliberately after graduation from college that ultimately determines if you're truly educated and highly informed or an educated illiterate. This distinction is as clear as daylight. Now, if you're enlightened and possess sound education, you would have a rudimentary grasp of history. The history of the earth, the history of religions, the history of mankind. You will possess an informed knowledge and understanding of the evolution of life, the roles and responsibilities of government, the different types of government, etc. If you are educated and highly informed, if you are knowledgeable, you should understand the role of religion in a society and why is separation of state and religion necessary. Why is it a necessity? You should have, that is, if you have multi-dimensional education, if you are learned, if you are highly informed, you should have a basic knowledge of the sciences, that is, astronomy, medicine, aviation, engineering, computer, economics, warfare, and geopolitics. Likewise, even the arts and entertainment, photography, music, acting, sculpture, architecture, and painting, the different genres, performing arts, visual or creative arts, literary arts, new or interactive media arts, etc. If you are highly informed, if you are not just, an educated illiterate, if you are highly informed as an individual, you would know the different players in all this arts and entertainment sector, the dramatists, actors, poets, authors, novelists, writers, cinematographers, choreographers or dancers, sculptors and painters, etc. Regardless of whether you love, whether you have affection for, or whether you have affection or passion for or against sports, you ought to be able to have a meaningful conversation on the various sports stars, and so forth. For instance, what are the major, soccer or football leagues in Europe? Who are the top global soccer or football stars? Can you mention top 5 tennis stars, both male and female? Can you mention the top 5 golf stars? And in boxing, who's the current world boxing champion? And so on. If you are highly informed as an individual, great leaders, because this is important, the reason why you have great leaders, and I'm not using Nigeria as an example, you don't have leaders of that caliber, the kinds of leader I'm referring to with this kind of with this level of multi-dimensional education, you hardly have them in Nigeria. But great leaders of the world have broad-based view and scope on life generally, and this comes from great learning. The foregoing, what I just described, is only an insight into what makes you an educated individual, and it is the minimum threshold. I'm saying what the little I described is just the minimum threshold, not the ultimate attainment of learning. And don't mind the lawyers who call themselves learned colleague or whatever. Law is just, one out of thousands of what will make you, an informed, learned individual. If you meet this standard, however, then you are useful to the larger society. Otherwise, you remain a great burden. Now, in this series, comprising of at least 5 teachings, we would examine the invaluable necessity of great learning and continuous education as a key to self-development of a well-rounded and total man that is useful to himself, to his family, to the society, the world at large, and ultimately to God. I would show you in this teaching, even the people, the great men in the Bible that God used, they were men of great learning. I will demonstrate it to you in this teaching that even for you to be used maximally by God, you must possess great learning. You can be an educated illiterate. Otherwise, you will be limited in use, in scope of influence and use, because you'll be bigoted. You're going to be biased, and your frame of reference is always going to be limited to the basis, to what you know. And life is way beyond the limited ignorance that you're parading, and you call yourself an educated person. Now, I will stop here, and I will continue in the next teaching on the part 2 in this series. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share this video. You're going to have a lot of fun in this teaching. I can guarantee you that. Share this video with your contacts and friends. Give me a feedback on your comments or opinions to this teaching and any other video I've put out there. And like I always say, in this season of COVID-19, stay safe and stay blessed.